The sun rose over the vast plains of Africa, golden light spilling across a continent that had long known both despair and resilience. In Ouagadougou, Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood at the edge of the presidential balcony, the red beret on his head stark against the soft morning light. His military uniform was crisp, adorned with medals and insignias that told the story of battles fought, victories won, and loyalty earned. The wind swept across the balcony, carrying with it the distant hum of the city and the whispers of history that seemed to gather around him like an invisible audience. News had traveled far and fast. 7 kings from across Africa had summoned a council, an extraordinary gathering that had never before taken place. These monarchs were not merely political figures. They were custodians of ancient legacies, each representing centuries of lineage and authority. They had called upon Traoré, not as a guest, but as a potential leader whose vision could redefine the continent. To him, the summons was both an honor and a test, a challenge to prove that he could unite a divided land not through force, but through courage, vision, and integrity. Inside the grand hall of the council, the 7 kings waited. Their presence was commanding, each exuding a quiet power that had been honed over decades. Their eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned Traoré as he entered, the weight of expectation heavy in the air. Every step he took echoed across the polished floors, a rhythm that seemed to mark the unfolding of destiny. Outside, citizens had gathered in tens of thousands, lining the streets and spilling into the plazas, their voices rising in anticipation, hearts pounding with the possibility of witnessing history in the making. The first king, a tall figure, draped in gold and crimson robes, spoke with a voice that resonated like a drumbeat through the chamber. He did not speak of ceremony or titles. He spoke of courage, resilience, and the trials that had tested Traoré at every step. His words cut through the silence. "We have watched your journey, Ibrahim Traoré. We have seen courage in the face of betrayal, vision where others saw despair. Africa watches you now." Traoré bowed his head, aware of the responsibility that hung upon him. This was no ordinary recognition. The council's judgment was more than honorific. It was a declaration that the fate of nations might now hinge upon his decisions. He felt the weight of history pressing on his shoulders, a reminder that leadership demanded sacrifice, that greatness was measured not in medals, but in the ability to carry the hopes of millions. He recalled the faces of the people he had served, the mothers and children whose eyes had spoken more truth than any council ever could. He thought of the villages he had visited, where hunger and injustice lingered like shadows. His resolve strengthened, for he knew that this recognition, if earned, could transform not only his nation, but the entire continent. The room remained silent, the air thick with anticipation until Traoré finally spoke. His voice, steady and unwavering, cut through the tension. He spoke of unity, of a vision that saw beyond borders, beyond tribal and national divides. He spoke of a continent that could stand together, strong and dignified in the face of centuries, of exploitation and division. The kings listened, their eyes narrowing and widening with each word, weighing every syllable. Outside the chamber, the crowd waited, unaware of the precise nature of the deliberations, but sensing the gravity of the moment. News had traveled through markets, schools, and villages, carried on the wind like an electric charge. People whispered to each other, "This is history. This is the moment Africa may rise as one." The first act of this gathering, this unprecedented meeting of minds and legacies, ended not with a declaration, but with a breathless pause. Every king and observer seemed to understand that the path forward would not be simple. Recognition would require more than words. It would require vision, courage, and the ability to face challenges that lay both within and outside the continent. Traoré remained at the center of it all, the red beret on his head a symbol of resilience, standing ready to navigate the storm that history had placed before him. The council chamber was alive with tension. The 7 kings, each draped in robes of deep colors embroidered with gold, watched Traoré as he moved among them. Their questions were sharp, probing, each one a test of character and vision. They did not simply ask for promises. They sought proof that he could carry the weight of an entire continent. Traoré stood tall, military uniform crisp, red beret in place, the calm in his posture belying the storm of thoughts inside him. One king leaned forward, his voice measured, but cutting. Africa has heard grand speeches before. Why should we believe your vision will not fail, leaving nations fractured once more? Traoré's gaze met the elders. He spoke steadily, with the clarity of someone who had faced life and death decisions on the battlefield. Because my vision is not for me. It is for every village, every mother, every child who has been ignored. It is for the people whose voices have been silenced by fear and oppression. I do not seek glory. I seek unity. A ripple moved through the chamber. Another king, younger, with sharp eyes and an aura of impatience, interjected, "And if your unity is challenged, if the old powers and foreign interests push back?" Traoré's reply was firm. Then we respond not with fear, but with resolve. Africa has endured for centuries. We have survived colonization, betrayal, and exploitation. We will endure again, stronger and united. The kings exchanged glances. Murmurs passed across the room like an undercurrent, the weight of centuries, of expectation pressing upon them all. One by one they tested his knowledge, his strategy, and his ability to navigate the delicate balance between tradition and modernity. They asked about trade agreements, military cooperation, resource management, and diplomacy. Each question was designed to catch him off guard, to reveal a flaw, to see if he would bend under pressure. Traoré answered each with poise, his voice calm but filled with conviction. He spoke of empowering local communities, of investing in education and infrastructure, of defending Africa's sovereignty without resorting to aggression. He spoke of collaboration, of respecting the wisdom of elders while empowering the younger generations to innovate. Outside the chamber, the crowd grew restless, sensing the tension inside even without knowing the details. Banners waved, drums beat, and voices chanted in anticipation, a collective heartbeat spanning nations. Children perched on rooftops, elders leaned on walking sticks, merchants paused mid-sail. All eyes turned toward the palace as if the continent itself was holding its breath. Back inside, the dialogue deepened. Some kings voiced skepticism, their words sharp, questioning his ability to balance ambition with prudence. Others, older and wiser, leaned back, watching carefully, noting the steadiness in Traoré's eyes, the clarity of his arguments, the unwavering courage in his tone. Hours turned into days. The council's deliberations were grueling. Traoré faced every challenge with the same resolve that had carried him through the battlefield. He understood that leadership was not just about vision or rhetoric. It was about consistency, integrity, and the courage to confront both internal doubt and external pressures. Finally, after days of scrutiny, a subtle shift occurred. Eyes that had been skeptical now glimmered with curiosity and respect. Heads that had tilted in doubt now nodded in acknowledgement. The first seeds of trust had been planted. Traoré knew this was only the beginning. Recognition would not come. Without continued trials, the eyes of Africa and the world were upon him, measuring every gesture, every word, every decision. But for the first time, he felt a sense of momentum building, a quiet confidence that the path toward unity, while perilous, was within reach. As night fell over the city, the chamber emptied, leaving Traoré alone with the echoes of the day. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars fallen to the earth. He looked out across the horizon, red beret catching the last rays of sun, and thought of the work still ahead. Africa was waiting, and he was ready to answer its call. Even as the council deliberated, forces beyond the palace walls stirred with unease. foreign emissaries and powerful interests, alarmed by the prospect of a united Africa under a single visionary leader, worked quietly to undermine Traoré. Messages, laden with veiled threats and promises of support for rival leaders, circulated, seeking to sway kings and ministers alike. Some African officials, fearful of losing influence, whispered doubts to the council, suggesting that Traoré's vision was overly ambitious, perhaps even reckless, but Traoré remained steadfast. Standing tall in his military uniform, red beret perfectly in place, he met each challenge with calm determination. He addressed the council's concerns with logic, humility, and unwavering courage, demonstrating that his commitment was not to personal power, but to the continent itself. He spoke of shared history and collective responsibility, reminding the kings that Africa's strength lay in unity, not in division. Tension grew as the kings probed deeper. One elder, draped in ceremonial robes, leaned forward with a piercing gaze. And if the people themselves resist? If unity is challenged by old rivalries and mistrust? Traoré's voice did not falter. Then we continue. We educate, we inspire, we show by action that together we are stronger. Leadership is not measured in words alone, but in the courage to act when others hesitate. Africa has endured the impossible before. It will endure again. Some kings exchanged glances, a mixture of skepticism and intrigue passing between them. Another questioned the balance between tradition and modernity. Traoré responded with clarity, emphasizing respect for culture while fostering innovation, ensuring that progress did not erase identity, but amplified it. Meanwhile, outside, the tension of the council had reached the streets. Citizens sensed the magnitude of what was unfolding. Markets paused, children stopped to listen to the distant hum of anticipation, and communities held their collective breath. The air seemed electric, carrying the weight of history across every village, town, and city. Africa itself appeared to lean toward the palace, waiting to see whether one man could meet the extraordinary expectations placed upon him. Inside, the council reached a critical juncture. A younger king, sharp-eyed and cautious, challenged Traoré with a pointed question. What if your vision fails? What if promises cannot be fulfilled and disillusionment spreads across nations? Traoré met the gaze with unwavering resolve. Failure is only certain if we do not try. My commitment is to action, not rhetoric. We cannot fear the possibility of failure, for hesitation ensures it. I will act with integrity, courage, and the welfare of the continent foremost in every decision. The chamber was silent. His words, simple but powerful, resonated like a drumbeat through the hall. Even those who had doubted him began to see that Traoré was no ordinary leader. He was a symbol of possibility, a bridge between Africa's history and its future, and a reminder that courage could inspire more than force ever could. Throughout the council, Traoré's diplomacy and vision won subtle victories. Skeptics softened, hesitant questions gave way to nods of acknowledgement, and murmurs of approval began to circulate. He demonstrated an ability to navigate both internal doubts and external pressures, showing the kings that he could handle the delicate balance required of a continent-wide leader. As the final day of deliberations approached, Traoré reflected quietly. He knew that recognition would not come without vigilance, that the path forward would be fraught with challenges. But the trust he had begun to earn, the subtle shifts in the council, and the hope he had ignited among the people reinforced his resolve. The night before the final session, he walked alone through the palace gardens, red beret catching the moonlight. The city beyond was quiet, yet alive with anticipation. Traoré drew a deep breath, feeling the weight of expectation, the hope of millions resting silently upon him. He understood that leadership was not simply a title, but the responsibility to act, to inspire, and to carry forward the dreams of a continent. He looked up at the stars, imagining the people who had come before, those who had fought, suffered, and dreamed of a stronger Africa. And he realized that the trials, the skepticism, and the resistance he faced were all part of a necessary journey. Leadership demanded patience, courage, and unwavering commitment. As dawn approached, Traoré straightened his uniform, adjusted his red beret, and prepared for the final session. The stage was set for a moment that would determine not just recognition by 7 kings, but the beginning of a new era for Africa itself. The morning of the crowning arrived with a clarity that seemed almost sacred. The sun rose slowly over Ouagadougou, casting golden light across the city, bathing the palace and its grounds in brilliance. Citizens lined the streets, waving flags, their faces radiant with hope, curiosity, and anticipation. The air was thick with excitement, every heartbeat of the crowd echoing the significance of the day. Inside the palace, the 7 kings prepared for the final session. Their robes shimmered with gold and deep jewel tones, the weight of tradition, heavy upon their shoulders. Each king carried centuries of legacy, yet each understood that the moment they were about to witness transcended ceremony. It was history in motion. Captain Ibrahim Traoré entered the chamber, red beret in place, military uniform immaculate. His steps were measured, deliberate, yet every movement conveyed confidence and purpose. The kings rose one by one as Traoré approached the central dais. The room, vast and silent, seemed to hold its breath. For a moment, the weight of expectation pressed down like a tangible force, and Traoré felt it, not as fear, but as resolve. This was the culmination of trials, scrutiny, and challenges that had tested not only his vision, but his character. The first king stepped forward, ceremonial staff in hand, and spoke with authority that resonated through the chamber. Ibrahim Traoré, you have proven your vision, your courage, and your loyalty to the people of Africa. You have faced skepticism with clarity, resistance with wisdom, and every challenge with unwavering resolve. Today, we recognize you as the true leader of Africa. One by one, the remaining 6 kings stepped forward, each placing a hand on Traoré's shoulder in a symbolic gesture of acknowledgement and support. Their eyes, usually stoic and unreadable, now shone with admiration and trust. The gesture was more than ceremonial. It was a transfer of confidence, a unified declaration that the continent's future could rest in his hands. Outside the palace, the crowd erupted in celebration. Drums rolled, voices soared, fireworks ignited the sky, and banners waved in rhythmic unison. From villages to urban centers, word spread like wildfire. Africa had found a leader recognized by the 7 kings. Streets overflowed with jubilant citizens, and children danced with joy, waving miniature flags, their laughter carrying across the city. Traoré stood tall on the balcony, red beret gleaming in the sunlight, and addressed the crowd with a voice both commanding and sincere. "This is not the victory of one man," he declared. "This is the promise of a continent united, resilient, and unyielding. Together, we will honor our history, protect our people, and build a future defined by strength and unity. The era of division ends today. The new era begins now." The kings joined him on the balcony, their presence a living testament to unity. Cameras and messengers captured every moment, ensuring that news would reach even the most remote villages. Across Africa, people paused to watch, to listen, and to feel the resonance of history being made in real time. Inside the chamber, advisors, diplomats, and citizens alike witnessed the culmination of days of deliberation. Skeptics who had once doubted Traoré's ability now nodded in acknowledgement. His words, his poise, and the sincerity of his vision had transcended hesitation, leaving only trust and hope. The palace grounds transformed into a festival of light, music, and color. Citizens, dignitaries, and soldiers gathered together, celebrating not just a leader, but the promise of collective strength. Markets buzzed with energy, children laughed freely in the streets, and families sang songs of hope that would echo for generations. For Traoré, the recognition was both an honor and a responsibility. Standing with the seven kings, he understood that leadership was more than titles or accolades. It was the courage to make decisions in the face of adversity, the vision to see beyond the immediate, and the unwavering commitment to the people he served. Every cheer, every flag, every smile reinforced the promise he had made, to unite, to inspire, and to lead Africa into a new era. As the sun set, painting the city in hues of gold and crimson, Traoré looked out across the horizon. The celebration continued, but his thoughts were already on the challenges ahead. He knew the journey of leadership was only beginning. The recognition by the seven kings marked not an end, but the start of a path toward real, lasting unity. And in that moment, beneath the banners and the cheers, a continent collectively held its breath, ready to rise, ready to follow, and ready to believe. The days and weeks that followed Traoré's recognition by the seven kings were transformative. Across Africa, people spoke of unity and possibility as if the continent itself had taken a collective breath. Borders no longer felt like walls, but bridges. Trade, education, and communication flourished in ways long stifled by division. Villages and cities alike celebrated not just a leader, but the promise of hope, resilience, and shared destiny. Traoré, in his military uniform and red beret, walked among his people, witnessing firsthand the change his recognition inspired. He saw children laughing freely in schools rebuilt with care, farmers working fields that had once been neglected, and communities organizing themselves with renewed pride. Every gesture, every smile reinforced the responsibility he bore, and he felt a quiet humility beneath the weight of history. Even the seven kings maintained counsel with him, not as rulers above him, but as allies and partners. Their support strengthened his resolve, a reminder that leadership was not about personal glory, but about guiding a continent toward its best self. As he stood once more on the palace balcony, gazing at the vast horizon and the countless lives, his actions touched. He felt the full weight of his journey. From a soldier rising through trials to a leader recognized by Africa's ancient lineages, he understood that true power lay in service, vision, and courage. The sun set over Ouagadougou, casting warm light across a continent awakening to possibility. Traoré's eyes, steady and determined beneath his red beret, reflected a promise. Africa had begun a new era, and its story had only just begun.